All right, my friends, thanks for joining me today. J.R. Dukes with you. Appreciate everybody taking time to join us this evening for tonight's conversation. How's everyone doing? Please take a moment and introduce yourself. Zach is already in the house. Zach, appreciate you being here in Southwest Pennsylvania. All right, we're going to give it just a second, let everybody file on in here. Looks like we're connected on X, definitely connected on YouTube. Facebook, all the magic is happening right now. Okay, fantastic. Another busy news day, and we have just went live on Twitch. Good, looking pretty good. Once again, I appreciate everybody taking time to join me this evening. Hope everybody has had a good week, and now it is time for the weekend. Fantastic, right? All right. Well, today we are going to be talking about one or two specific topics that I think are interesting. You know, there's all this lawfare going on right now. The lawfare is just unbelievable. It's out of hand. We're going to be talking about a subject today pertaining to this one sitting judge on the Circuit Court of Appeals. I believe it's out of the District of DC. The DC district out there. It's a very liberal district to begin with anyways. And I mentioned the other day on one of the programs that we did together that it's just highly unusual for a sitting judge to give an interview. These individuals are supposed to be regulated and self-regulated at that with the highest standards, similar to what Fannie Willis is supposed to be doing. However, an actual sitting judge is held to these very high ethical principles, what we call judicial canons, when a canon is basically just a rule that they agree to be held by. And that's the reason why you generally don't see judges, or especially a sitting judge, especially a court of appeals judge, making comments on the news. They're just supposed to be very quiet. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to show you some interesting developments. One other quick thing here. Here's a link that I'm putting in the conversation right now. If you would like to join, all you have to have is a camera, microphone. Click on that link right there, and that's it. You'll pop up like magic on my computer right here, and you are welcome to have a discussion, ask your question, whatever it is you would like. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get on camera and say hello. The more you get on camera, the more used to it you become anyways. I know a few of the folks that follow me have their own YouTube channels anyway, so might as well come on and chat. Happy to always chat with everybody and anybody for that matter. Just have to use respect, like I always request in the comments. Just be polite. Have any kind of comments you have, make sure they're what you call constructive criticism comments. That's always appreciated too. All right, let's take a look at what we got on the agenda. And okay, here we go. All right, first thing we're going to do is, and I guess it's the main subject, and that's what I put on the icon right there. I tried to stay very consistent with what I advertise. All right, out of the New York Post is this particular article here. You all may remember this guy right here. Remember this judge we talked about? I guess it was either Monday or Tuesday of this week. Trump ally slaps complaint against federal judge who trashed ex-president on CNN. Very dangerous territory. Amen. So we're going to talk about this, and we're going to read and go through the actual complaint because it has a lot of relevant information, and it pretty well shoots down this notion out of Judge Merchan's court that somehow President Donald Trump attacked his daughter, because that's been the false premise we've been running with all evening. And it's just one of these fantastic lies that I keep talking about, because that's exactly what this is and what this has been. And we're going to start off. Let's take a quick peek down memory lane. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to share this particular screen. So let me bounce out and bounce right back in so you will have a good volume on this particular thing. There we go. All right, let's take a quick trip down memory lane and listen to this interview he gave. I know that too often we always say that something is unprecedented or this is a very rare type of situation, but this is unprecedented. And as far as my mind is concerned, I have never seen a sitting judge on television with an interview slamming a current presidential candidate. If you have seen that, you're welcome to put it in the comments. I would like to know what you have seen. I have just never seen it. And again, This goes into this lawfare nonsense because you have the judicial system sharply split between the Republicans and Democrats, and it's clear that the Democrats are pulling out all of the tricks, and I do mean tricks, and I mean law breaking. I have some actual ethical rules that these individuals are supposed to be governed by, and we're going to see what he may have broken. It's what interests me about this is it obviously stems from that first case, Alvin Bragg out of New York, this so-called hush money payment to the porn star Stormy Daniels from Donald Trump or his then lawyer slash fixer Michael Cohen, a proven convicted liar. However, Alvin Bragg has weaved together this BS type of case against President Donald Trump. If you can get your mind around this, this type of violation is normally a misdemeanor. Well, because it's all the way back from 2016, the statute of limitations has ran on this. So what you have now is you have basically a sitting city prosecutor who has weaving together this novel argument saying, hey, I'm basically going to enforce federal election law as a city prosecutor, and I'm going to weave it together with this BS records violation that is generally a misdemeanor. So what he was able to do by weaving it like this is make it a felony and also extend the statute of limitations to where he can go ahead and prosecute President Donald Trump. Obviously, we know what's going on here. Lawfare is just half of it. It's bona fide election interference. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought in a million years as a patriot here in our great country that we would have a conversation that basically says we have the party in power trying to stop you and me from being able to vote for who we want as the next president of the United States? We have had states take this man off of the ballot, and they were attempting to take, other states were attempting to take him off the ballot. You have a sitting president that as soon as he got in office, I think it was within 48 hours, was on the phone with Twitter and Facebook and all the other different social media campaigns and making a suggestion, aka censorship, that they should go ahead and take down this post or that post because they have determined that it was fraud, that it was illegal, that there was misinformation going on. And of course, as they said to the Supreme Court the other day, it was just a suggestion. But I can assure you, if you have the federal government or the state government on the phone with you and they are making a suggestion, it's not a suggestion. It's almost like you're a child and your dad is saying, you know what I'd like you to do, son? I got a suggestion for you. I would like you to do your homework or something to that effect. You know, I know it's not a suggestion. That's complete nonsense. But at any rate, you have the government engaging in censorship. You have them doing everything they can to rush this to a trial, like Jack Smith fame, trying to hurry this to a trial because they're so desperate to get a felonious felony conviction against President Donald Trump before we go to the polls. They're just desperate to stop him in any way they possibly can because they know that if Donald Trump's on the ballot and we have the opportunity to vote for him for president, that he's going to win. And when he wins, he can also pardon himself on the vast majority of these cases. I personally hope the Supreme Court is going to erase all these cases simply because I believe a president of the United States has absolute immunity, similar to the way police officers and other officials have qualified immunity. For example, generals that are in the Army, they have absolute immunity for anything related to the military as far as following a lawful order. They can't be prosecuted for following a lawful order. I hope that makes sense if you understand what I'm saying. Zach, tricks, more like dirty tricks, exactly. I agree with you 100%. All right, so let's take a look at this first video, and we will talk about it in just a second. And here,
the New York judge in Donald Trump's upcoming hush money trial has made it crystal clear this week that he is not in the mood for any games from the former president or his legal team, banning Trump from attacking prosecutors, witnesses, and jurors. So Trump has found someone new to attack, Judge Juan Merchan's daughter. In a new post tonight, he calls her out by name. Trump goes after her as a, quote, rabid Trump hater because she's done work for Democratic campaigns in the past. He didn't stop there. He also accused her of posting a picture of him behind bars which Trump says, quote, makes it completely impossible for me to get a fair trial. I should note, however, that that is apparently not true. And the New York State court system says that long ago, Judge Merchan's daughter abandoned that Twitter account and that it's also not linked to her email. Even so, she's a private citizen. She's not party to this case. I should note that the gag order that the judge did put in place earlier this week doesn't apply to himself nor to his family. Tonight, I want to bring in senior U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton, who was nominated for judgeships by both Presidents Bush 41 and 43. And it's great to have you here, Judge, tonight. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. And I think to a lot of people, the dangers of attacking a judge and his family and their family is clear. I wonder how you would respond to something like this.
Well, it's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family. I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
And you know personally, I mean, what this is like. Someone threatened your daughter once as well.
Yes, threatened me one day, and then the next day called and made a threat against my daughter, and also had indicated my address. So they obviously had done some research to find out that I had a daughter and what her name was, and also where I live.
I mean, what's that even? That must be terrifying.
Well, it is, but you kind of have to appreciate that you can't let that impact on how you live your life and how you treat litigants who are before you, because even though threats may be made against you and against your family, you still have an obligation to ensure that everybody who comes into your courtroom is treated fairly, regardless of who they are or what they've done. But nonetheless, it is very troubling because I think it is an attack on the rule of law when judges are threatened, and particularly when their family is threatened. And it's something that's wrong and should not happen.
Given that, I mean, and you said it shouldn't impact your work, but it's got to be something that's always kind of in the back of your mind when you're going to work, when you're leaving, to have those kinds of threats hanging out there.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a reality that it's not inconceivable that something could happen. We always have to hope that it doesn't occur. But, you know, several years ago, one of my colleagues up in New Jersey, her husband was seriously injured. And sadly, her son was killed. And we had a judge out in Chicago who someone came after her. And fortunately, she was not there, but her family members were. And several of them lost their lives. So it's a reality that we live with, but you try not to let it impact on your day-to-day life.
I don't expect you to get political here, obviously, but do you think that's something that Donald Trump considers when he posts something like this?
I can't get into someone's mind to say whether they appreciate the impact that they're doing, but I would think that any reasonable thinking person would appreciate that when they say things, it can sometimes resonate with others. And I think that's particularly true when you have somebody who has status in our society and they make certain statements. It can cause people to act on those statements, even if they don't necessarily intend for someone to do so. So I think it's very important that people in positions of authority be very circumspect in reference to the things that they say, so that they're not causing others to act on what they say and maybe cause injury or death to someone as a result of that.
What do you make of how the judge here, Judge Juan Merchan, didn't include himself or his family in the gag order?
Yeah, I understand why he wouldn't do that. I mean, again, I think we cannot make ourselves a part of the case. I mean, obviously we are a part of the case because we're presiding over the proceeding, but we can't make the case in the issue about us. And that can be very difficult, but it comes with the territory. I mean, first and foremost, when we take the oath of office, we have an obligation to make sure that all parties who enter our courtroom receive a fair adjudication, regardless of who they are, what their politics are, or what they've alleged to have done. And therefore, I think it's crucial that judges not make themselves a part of the issue. So I think the judge did the right thing by not including himself in the gag order.
You're someone who has always been really straightforward in your assessment of the former president. You know, if you read your comments when you're sentencing people, when you're in these cases, you once referred to him as a charlatan at the sentencing of a January 6th defendant. I know you've gotten a lot of those cases before you. You said that you don't think he cares about democracy, only power. That you once seemed to suggest you weren't sure he'd accept defeat if he lost in this election. Do you still feel that way tonight?
I'd rather not comment on that. I mean, I've made those, the comments I've made in the context of the sentencings I impose, because I'm hoping that what I say to the individuals who I'm sentencing will resonate with them and cause them to rethink the activity that they engaged in that brought them before the court, and hopefully deter them from engaging in further conduct of that nature in the future.
Have you been on the receiving end of more threats since you've had the January 6th defendants in your court?
Yes, I've had more threats than what used to be the case. Yes, I have received a greater number of threats as a result of that incident, and the fact that cases arising out of that incident have appeared before me. I mean, it was rare. I've been a judge for over 40 years. And this is a new phenomenon. I'm not saying that it didn't happen before, but it was very rare that I would ever receive any type of a threat, regardless of what type of cases I was handling. And unfortunately, that is no longer the case. I know the Marshal Service has seen a significant increase in the number of threats against judges. And I think obviously that's very, very, very concerning.
You know, it's rare that we get to hear from a sitting federal judge, but obviously this is a gravely important issue. I wonder what made you speak out tonight and speak publicly.
Well, I am concerned because, like I say, we have had judges who've lost their lives, or family members have lost their lives as a result of individuals who have been litigants in their courtroom. And I think it's important, in order to preserve our democracy, that we maintain the rule of law. And the rule of law can only be maintained if we have independent judicial officers who are able to do their job and ensure that the laws are in fact enforced, and that the laws are applied equally to everybody who appears in our courthouse. And I think it's important that as judges, we speak out and say things in reference to things that conceivably are going to impact on the process. Because if we don't have a viable court system that's able to function efficiently, then we have tyranny. And I don't think that would be good for the future of our country and the future of the.
I really want to.
So isn't that interesting, the way that they put that? I love the way that they continually love to conflate one issue with another issue. It's almost like Donald Trump is responsible for anything and everything that has went that has went wrong, or that was a problem in the court system at any given time. You know how, like, the judge will say, oh, well, it's important for our democracy. In other words, Trump is against our democracy. And then she would ask leading questions. And by the way, Cindy, Zach, and Danny, you guys are exactly right with your observations. These people are leading the judge, or this reporter's leading the judge with the questions that she's asking. You can tell that she is smiling, at that smirk on her face, and yeah, we're going to nail this guy. It's that type of leading question. And the judge's comments, as I said the other day, are so inappropriate. And this is a guy that has sentenced January 6 individuals, hostages, whatever you want to call them, to prison. And he thinks it's perfectly normal now to go on television like this. And you, at the bottom, you see where it said he is a sitting judge. And I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous to me that he would go online and go into an interview and do this. So, at any rate, I told you that it was wrong. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. Let's see. Let's take a quick peek at this and let's see what has happened since then. And I think they're going to, when we read this complaint together, I think you're going to see just how inappropriate it is, because this guy took the time to go over each and every section and point out exactly what the judge did wrong, or the judge, or why he shouldn't have done what he did. So anyway, this is again from the New York Post. Trump ally slaps complaint against federal judge who trashed ex-president on CNN. And by the way, I'll show you this in a second, but it's Mike Davis, who's a former chief counsel he's an ally, admittedly, of President Donald Trump. So, at any rate, let's see if we can get this. I think this will work, and let's listen to this real quick. It's a short piece here.
Comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family. I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law, and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
It's just like Donald Trump is responsible for any comment or any comment that's ever been said, and the inference there is that Donald Trump has somehow made some type of threat, and we're gonna get into that here. So let's read this article real quick, and then we're gonna get right into the complaint. A key ally of Donald Trump filed a complaint Tuesday against a district judge out of Washington, D.C., the guy we just saw, who appeared on CNN last week and took jabs at the former president. U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton, that was the judge we just saw, went on cable news network, aka CNN, to discuss Trump's attacks on the judge overseeing this hush money case out of Manhattan, and was openly critical of the 45th president. That's putting it mildly. Mike Davis, the founder of Article 3 Project, an advocacy group that pushes for the nominations of conservative judges, ripped Walton's CNN appearance as judicial misconduct. Amen. We are seeing a dangerous pattern in which D.C. federal judges like Reggie Walton have convinced themselves that they have a duty, unbounded by judicial canons that we've talked about before, to make extrajudicial pronouncement about President Trump. Davis wrote in a 13-page complaint. There's that judge that we just saw in all his glory right there. All right. And it says Davis' complaint was addressed to the chief judge, Cire Sirvans, I can't say his name, of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And generally speaking, the chief judge, as you might expect, is the individual that regulates the judges below him. He's essentially the boss. Okay, he told the Post that his goal is for Walton to get reprimand and to send a very clear message to other judges, especially in D.C., that they cannot take off their political robes and climb into the political arena. In his complaint, Davis highlighted a provision of the Code of Conduct for U.S. judges, stipulating that judges have an obligation not to denigrate public confidence in the judiciary's integrity. It is much worse when a different judge, especially a sitting federal judge, thinks it's his job to moonlight as a CNN commentator on a pending criminal case in another judge's court, he added. During his appearance on CNN last Thursday, Walton opined that Trump's Truth Social screened against, Manhattan Superior Court Justice Juan Merchant, whose daughter, Loren Merchant Helms, she helms Authentic Campaigns. That was the website, aka the advocacy group that is Democratic, a Chicago-based progressive political consulting firm. And it says here, this is obviously a copy off of X. Senior Judge Reggie Walton, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law, and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm. What does that have to do with Donald Trump? That's the point I'm trying to make. Donald Trump did not make a threat. And when we read the actual complaint, he does a fantastic job of pointing that out clearly. At the time, Trump had made posts alleging that Judge Juan Merchant suffered from an acute Trump derangement syndrome and was totally compromised. He also complained about Loren Merchant peddling questionable claims about her social media activity. Well, it's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they are directed at one's family, Walton told CNN. And here is a comment off Truth Social from Donald Trump. It says, Judge Juan Merchant, who is suffering from an acute case of Trump derangement syndrome, whose daughter represented crooked Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Adam Shifty Shift, and other radical lippers, just posted a picture of me behind bars. Her obvious, and just to be clear, there is no picture of Donald Trump behind bars. It's like one of those Photoshop type deals. I was confused by that myself till I looked further into it. It goes on to say her obvious goal and makes it completely impossible for me to get a fair trial. Has now issued another illegal, un-American, unconstitutional order. And he continues, let me get back my screen here. And he continues to try to take away my rights. This judge, by issuing a vicious gag order, is wrongfully attempting to deprive me of my First Amendment right to speak out against the weaponization of law enforcement, including the fact that crooked Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, who of course is the head of the Department of Justice, or I should say the Attorney General, and their hacks and thugs are tracking and following me across the country, obviously trying to persecute me while everyone knows I've done nothing wrong. Folks, we've talked about them gag orders. Can you imagine that? A gag order, not only is it extremely unconstitutional, but this man is running for president of the United States and he cannot speak up to defend himself. It's going to be interesting to see if they try to actually throw him in jail for making a comment that they allege is in violation of the gag order. What are they going to do? Have a running president, a former president, put in jail for speaking? Can you imagine that? That sounds like some of that nonsense going over in Scotland we talked about the other day, where you can't criticize anybody without facing a felony and having up to 7 years in prison. Walton further recalled how he and his daughter had been threatened in the past and warned about the hurdles that can be posed to uphold the rule of law. Davis disputed Walton's suggestion that Trump threatened Merchant, arguing that the former president merely articulated the reason why he believes he will not receive a fair trial. And that's absolutely true. He did not make any threat against her. And have you noticed when they said it's his child, it sounds like we're talking about a minor. This woman's a grown woman who has operated this entity, this company. She is a Democratic political operative. There's really no other way to say it. She is a Democratic operative, and I believe she has made like $93 million in contributions for the Democrats. She has represented Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. Remember, we looked at the website the other day. These are people that she openly advertises as her cronies, as people that she's helped. And, here's what's ironic. They hammered Donald Trump because of the relationship between the judge's daughter, who is clearly Democrat, and the judge, who is clearly Democrat. And they're like, oh, no, there's no reason to recuse. However, Clarence Thomas, who you may know is a justice on the United States Supreme Court, they hammer him daily over his wife's affiliation with some conservative work she does. And they're always hammering that Justice Clarence Thomas should step aside and hear no case that has anything to do with Donald Trump because of that. And that is the way that they always operate. It's always two faces with the Democratic Party. They always try to goat the Republicans into doing their bidding, and they will not uphold the same on their end. And what I'm talking about, of course, is George Santos. He has to go. He's a terrible guy. The Republicans take the bait, but they don't do the same to clean their own house. Remember the guy pulling the fire alarm to disrupt Congress? And then, of course, you have the sitting senator who's under major federal indictment out of New Jersey. All right. A reasonable person cannot read President Trump's post and draw the conclusion that he made any such threat, Davis argued. President Trump, for example, did not dox the home addresses of the judge and his adult daughter, nor did President Trump encourage illegal posts outside of their homes. For those who may not know, doxing is basically disclosing someone's personal information, where they live, this type of thing. And he included a Google search, apparently, of Reggie. It says this is in his complaint. A Google search was cited in Mike Davis' complaint against Judge Walton. In addition to Walton's CNN appearance, the DC-based judge has previously called Trump a charlatan. Can you imagine that? You're in front as a J6 person that walked through the Capitol. You're in front of this judge. He is going to pronounce sentence on you for walking through the Capitol building, and you already know that he has called former President Donald Trump a charlatan. And his other comment is, I don't think he cares about our democracy, only power, and questioned whether Trump would accept defeat. I made the comments I made in the context of sentencing I've imposed because I'm hoping what I say to the individuals I'm sentencing will resonate. Walton, who has overseen a handful of Capitol riot cases, explained to CNN last Thursday. Davis, a former congressional aide who played a key role in advancing conservative judicial nominees, contended that Walton's public plundering was the wrong way to remedy the situation. Yeah, duh. If the criminal defendant truly makes violent threats, a prosecutor can charge him with obstruction, witness tampering, and related crimes, he wrote. But we have entered very dangerous territory as a country when attorneys accuse a criminal defendant of making a violent threat against a judge for simply raising evidence of the judge's potential bias. Davis further warned that Walton's actions would have poisoned a potential jury pool as the selection is set to commence April 15th for the hush money case in which Trump is facing 34 criminal counts. Judge Walton's clear violation is highly prejudicial to President Trump as it taints 4 different jury pools, he added. And here's a beautiful picture of Judge Merchant. I could not agree more with what he has to say in here. I mean, this is so over the top. It is so ridiculous. Let me share the screen right here. I want to show you any 2-year-old idiot can see clearly that what he did is absolutely improper. And then I'll take a look at some of the comments here. But this quick Google search right here, I just want to point out Mike Davis, the individual that did file the complaint gratefully against this judge, a former chief counsel for nominations to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley is the founder and president of Article 3 Project. You'll notice that on the top of the letterhead as we go through this complaint here in just a second. And here's the actual complaint I was able to find on my Scribe account. I have already downloaded it. I wanted to show this screen here because all I did is I just typed in here to Google, what are the rules for a current federal judge speaking to the press? Because I know they have canons and they have rules on this type stuff. And again, it's not difficult to figure out. Right here is a government website. It's called www.uscourts.gov, and it highlights right here at the beginning, in keeping with ethic rules, federal judges do not grant interviews about active cases. I guess unless your name is Judge Reggie Walton, judges speak through comments made in open court or through written decisions. Reporters must rely on the official case proceedings as their primary information source. I mean, isn't that just kind of common sense? You can't have a judge who has the robe on, takes the robe off and gives an interview and starts slamming the people that are actively in the court system or that may be coming through the court system. I mean, it's such a terrible, terrible lapse of judgment. I mean, these people are idiots. And here is that website. I just wanted to pull it up so that we can take a quick peek at it. This is Laura Loomer is what it says now. I am of the firm belief that this is definitely Merchant's daughter's site. Now, she may have temporarily handed it off to a friend or something like that, but it's printed all over the site that, oh, this has nothing to do with that case. And we know what's going on. It just, they're playing a game of hide the sausage, right? That's all that boils down to. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start looking into the actual complaint because that's really what I want to get into as of right now. All right, let me switch over. Now, remember, this is the actual complaint. I think it's about, 13 pages, 12, 13 pages that he filed with essentially the Chief Justice on the United States Court of Appeals. Before I do that, we're going to just take a quick peek at the comments. I want to welcome everybody in and make sure no one has any active question that I need. If you have a question, this is a good time to put it in here. Gloria, thanks for joining us today. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining always. Cindy, Zach, all you guys. It's great. Yeah, these people, in my opinion, they just make my blood boil. And that's the main reason I do these type of videos is we have to shine a light on this nonsense. They can't get away with this. All right, Frank, thanks for joining us. The judge refused Trump to enter evidence against him. Yeah, I've heard all about that. We know the fix is in. It's in a heavily Democratic area, like 95+% are Democrats. You can imagine what type of fair trial he's going to get. CNN, you are dying. Race News Network. Yeah, I agree with you. They are definitely hurting Gloria, I am pretty sure President Trump would think very carefully by now on what comments he would say, knowing every word he says or does. I don't think he cares. I think his mind is, I'm going to speak the truth, and I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm going to say it the way I see it. And I think that's what he has to do. He really has no choice. It's not the time to allow these loons or these Democrats, these woke individuals. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of stopping my voice. I wouldn't change anything. But I agree with you, Gloria, in the sense that I'm sure he's aware everything he says is going to be repeated. Donald Trump's pretty smart, too. I think he is well aware of what he says, and he knows it causes controversy. Frank, this case is headed to the appellate. Yeah, unfortunately, though, he'll be labeled a felony or a felonious individual with the felonies that they're going to try to peg on him. That is the problem. I don't believe it's going to cause him many votes in the election, but you never know. There's polling that shows kind of both ways. But again, I think most people have to know what we know, and that is this is nothing but election interference, lawfare, and the weaponization of the federal, state, local governments to do the bidding of the party that is in power. It is so disgraceful. Disgraceful. All right. And see, Kathleen Collins worked for Tucker Carlson. All right. And then Gloria, President Trump called Kitty Collins a nasty person. I think I did hear that, actually. I think I did hear that. Hope President Trump will nominate Mike Davis as AG. You know who'd be a great AG if President Trump wins again would be Ted Cruz. Can you imagine that? The senator from Texas? That would be very interesting. Zach, he probably, yeah, I'm sure he would. All right. And American Nana, it's always good to have you in the house, sweetheart. Thank you so much for being here. All right, folks, let's dive into this article because I think it's a good read and I think it's interesting. So let's go ahead and take a peek at it. All right. It is looking good. Actually, I got to switch my screen here. Give me 1 second here. Got to pick the other screen. I'm not too bad at using this software, but sometimes I get flapping my jaw and I get kind of ahead of myself if I'm not absolutely careful, but I think I got it now. It's going to pull up hopefully in 1 second. Share screen. Okay, I think we're in good shape. Here we go. All right. Obviously, as I said earlier, the top up here, this is his firm that he's associated with, the Article 3 Project, April 2nd, 2024. Judicial Council of the District of Columbia Circuit, the Office of Circuit Executive, United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Really official, nice title. And the reason for this letter is judicial misconduct complaint against senior U.S. District Judge Reggie Barnott Walton, that gentleman we just saw slice and dice Donald Trump directly and indirectly in every which way. I told you the other day, I've never seen this. And so to see this complaint is not a surprise to me at all. All right, dear Chief Judge, criminal defendants, not the government, must have the constitutional right to a fair, public, and speedy trial. Amen. If there is anyone in America who must have the constitutional right to speak out against the judge, the prosecutors, their staff, the witnesses, their potential biases, and the criminal process, it is a criminal defendant. Amen. Preventing a criminal defendant from exercising this bedrock constitutional right through a gag order, a prior restraint. See, it's called a prior restraint, a gag order. You're essentially having a sentence. You're essentially being punished without a conviction. And that is unconstitutional. It just hasn't, as of yet, made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. I hope it does at some point because these are so clearly unconstitutional. A prior restraint on free speech and an obvious obstacle to due process and a fair trial. It's illegal, unconstitutional, and unconscionable. This is especially true when a criminal defendant believes political opponents have politicized and weaponized our criminal justice system against him. It is truly unbelievable that any American judge would place a gag order on a presidential candidate during the height of the presidential campaign, the presidential campaign, especially when the presidential candidate believes the criminal indictments are part of his opponent's political campaign of lawfare and election interference. Isn't this a beautiful document? I just love to read this. This is what I call legal poetry. I mean, it is. It is just beautiful. What a fantastic way to write this and look at this. If a criminal defendant truly makes violent threats, a prosecutor can charge him with obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and related crimes. But we have entered a very dangerous territory as our country. When attorneys accuse, we have entered dangerous territory as a country when attorneys accuse a criminal defendant of making a violent threat against a judge for simply raising evidence of the judge's potential bias. And it would be inexcusable for another sitting judge, especially a federal judge, I totally agree, to go on a primetime national television broadcast with hundreds of thousands of viewers, including the criminal defendant's jury pool, and make such a clearly inappropriate, defamatory, highly prejudicial, and outrageous claims against a criminal defendant while his criminal case is pending before a different judge. Unbelievably, this is precisely what Judge Reggie Walton, a senior judge on the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, did before hundreds of thousands of CNN viewers last Thursday before Easter weekend. Judge Walton must have known his pre-planned CNN interview would get millions of views, including nearly 500,000 views on the night of its airing and millions of more views through subsequent television and social media coverage since last Thursday. And Judge Walton must have known his interview was highly prejudicial to President Trump, who now must face jury pools in New York City starting in less than 2 weeks, Washington, D.C., where Judge Walton presides, including over many related January 6 criminal cases, Atlanta and Florida, who now have heard a sitting D.C. federal judge essentially accuse a criminal defendant of making violent threats against another judge and his family for simply raising political judicial bias by the judge presiding over his case. Amen. Now we're getting into the canons right here. All right. And remember, a canon is a rule, all right? Canon 3A6 of the Code of Conduct for the United States Judges states, quote, a judge should not make a public comment on the merits of a matter pending or impending in any court, end of quote. Senior District U.S. Judge Reggie Walton clearly violated this canon. Judge Walton's clear violation is highly prejudicial to President Trump as it taints 4 different jury pools. Judge Walton's highly inappropriately planned, highly presidential political CNN interview will cause the federal judiciary to lose its legitimacy with a broad swath of the American people. D.C. federal judges must get their house in order and take immediate corrective action against Judge Walton. This will send a clear message to other federal judges, especially D.C. judges, that they cannot take off their judicial robes and climb into the political ring. Any federal judges certainly cannot throw political punches against any criminal defendant, especially one who happens to be the leading presidential candidate during the heat of the highly contentious presidential election season. Thus, we filed this complaint for Judge Walton's judicial misconduct. Pretty well put, right? All right. President Trump, the leading presidential candidate for 2024, is scheduled to face trial commencing on April 15th, stemming from a 34-count felony indictment brought by the elected Democratic Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Bragg is essentially accusing President Trump of a felony campaign finance violation for, at best, time-barred misdemeanor bookkeeping violations after President Trump's settlement of a nuisance claim. The prior Manhattan DA, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney, and Federal Election Commission, and Alvin Bragg himself previously declined to bring charges against President Trump under this novel legal theory. That's what we were talking about a little while back. This changed when Matthew Calhoun, whatever his last name is, a senior political appointee in the Biden Justice Administration and former senior political appointee in the Obama White House, Obama Justice Department, and Obama DNC, joined Bragg's office and brought the first indictment ever against any former president. Manhattan Judge Juan Manuel Merchant who donated to Biden's presidential campaign and another anti-Trump cause in 2020, is the presiding judge for this unprecedented criminal trial and a former and likely future president. Recently, President Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, and posted that because of Judge Merchant's adult daughter's business as a Democratic political consultant, President Trump could not receive a fair trial before Judge Merchant. I think that's completely proper. Now, this is the post. I'm not going to read it again because we just read it a few minutes ago that Donald Trump put on Truth Social pertaining to Judge Juan Merchant and basically making a comment about his daughter and the gag order. There's nothing wrong in this particular post. Just that simple. This is another post where he said that Judge Juan Merchant is totally compromised and he should be removed from this Trump non-case immediately. His daughter, Loren, is a rabid Trump hater who has admitted to having conversations with her father about me. She has admitted having conversations with her dad, who's the judge. Do we all get that? That's just remarkable, ain't it? Who has admitted having conversation with her father about me, and yet he gagged me. He works for Crooked Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Adam Shifty Schiff, and the radical lefties who complained on getting Trump. All right. And fundraised off the Biden indictments, including his witch hunt, which her father presides, in quotes, over a total conflict and attacking Biden's political opponent through the courts. Unbelievable. Former DA Vance refused to bring this case, as did all federal agencies, including elections. Another Trump post says, page 2, in this country, we have a right to justice for all. As Andy McCarthy stated, we should think of Bragg as falsifying his prosecution. And as Jonathan Turley said, these guys are on Fox News all the time. If you haven't heard of their names, they give commentary all the time. And I think it's fantastic commentary for what it's worth. It's illegally pathetic, it's illegally pathetic. There was no crime. Virtually every legal scholar says it's not a case has ever been brought before. It's not criminal and it shouldn't exist, except for the fact that we have a biased, conflicted, and a corrupt judge and a DA in charge. Dismiss this ridiculous non-case and make the American justice system great again. Perfect statement from Donald Trump. I don't see nothing threatening in there, as I'm sure you do not either. All right, moving on. President Trump never levied any threats against either Judge Merchant or his adult daughter, a Democratic political consultant. On March 30, 2024, the New York Post reported extensively on this matter. Two major Democratic clients of the daughter of the judge overseeing Donald Trump's hush money trial have raised at least $93 million in campaign donations and used the case in their solicitation emails, raising renewed concerns that the jurist has a major conflict of interest, the jurist being the judge. Trump's attorneys are considering filing another motion demanding Manhattan Superior Court Justice Juan Merchant recuse himself from the trial set to begin January 15th, sources say. Folks, as a side note, I cannot imagine that this case will go off on April 15th. Well, let's say it this way. It may go on the 15th, but I'm sure the president's attorneys are going to drop some last minute something trying to put it off. At least they should. There's a lot there to work with. Well, we'll see what happens, so stay tuned. All right, moving on. The judge's daughter, Loren Merchant, is president of Authentic Campaigns, a Chicago-based progressive political consulting firm whose top clients include Representative Adam Schiff of California, who was the lead prosecutor in Trump's first impeachment trial, and Senate Majority PAC, a major party fundraiser. Authentic Campaigns, and thus the judge's daughter, is actively making money from the sham attack against President Trump, rendering Judge Juan Merchant conflicted out. Trump spokesman Stephen Chung told the Post, adding that evidence of bias is even clearer now than it was in August when Merchant rejected Trump's first recusal motion. The judge should do the right thing and immediately recuse himself in order to show the American people that the Democrats have not destroyed our justice system completely. Him continuing to be involved in this crooked Joe Biden directed witch hunt is a complete violation of applicable rules, regulations, and ethics. Amen. Schiff's campaign for U.S. Senate scored an eye-popping $20 million in aid since he began soliciting donations off the presumptive GOP presidential frontrunner's unprecedented 34-count indictment last April, according to the Federal Elections Commission records. So all these Democrats, folks, are making big money as they are reaching out for more campaign donations by advertising the trouble they're causing for dear President Donald Trump. Trump has pled not guilty to felony counts of falsifying business records related to alleged hush money payments made to a porn star, Stormy Daniels, and Karen McDonald. He has denied having affairs with both women. If convicted, he faces up to 4 years in prison. I did not realize that. You know what? Karen McDougal is not a porn star. The way it was written, almost made to porn stars Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. It almost looks like he's saying both of them are a porn star, and Karen McDougal is not a porn star. I would have wrote that differently. But anyway, point taken. Schiff's fundraising email began. It is a somber moment and unprecedented for a former president to be indicted, but his alleged offenses are also unprecedented. This is lying Adam Schiff. I mean, he's been on TV a million times lying to each and every one of us every single time he opens his mouth. Trump will respond, as he always does, playing the victim and blaming others for having the temerity to investigate him in the first place. Schiff continued in the email request to supporters for $10 donations last spring. The Senate Majority Political Action Committee, which supports Democratic Senate campaigns, pocketed $73.6 million. Nice, huh? Since it also began firing off fundraising emails following the ex-president's indictment. Quote, breaking news, Donald Trump indicted by Manhattan grand jury. This is an important moment for our democracy, but our work is not over, end quote. The group said in an email, Fox News reported, quote, we must continue protecting our Senate majority from the GOP extremists. Please rush in $10. Now it becomes $60 to help defend the Senate, end quote. The Super PAC has done more than $15 million in business with Authentic since 2029, including email fundraising and branding assistance, while Schiff's Senate campaign paid Authentic more than $10 million for digital advertising and other consulting services, the past year record shows. Unbelievable, folks. Constitutional and criminal law attorney Alan Dershowitz, who we have talked about many times, said if the judge's daughter is involved in anti-Trump politics, there's, quote, there seems to be a basis for recusal of the father, end quote. Yeah, that falls under duh. All right, quote, under the law, close relationships can sometimes constitute a basis for recusal, end quote, he told the Post. Loren Merchant, who worked for Vice President Kamala Harris' 2020 presidential campaign as, quote, director of digital persuasion, end quote, has said her father detests politicians using Twitter, an apparent reference to Trump. Quote, I've actually made a couple conversations with my dad recently where he's kind of like, I hate that politicians use Twitter, and like it's so unprofessional, as you know. That's not how a politician should behave themselves. And I explained that, like, yeah, I think there are a lot of instances in which it is not used in, like when our President Trump tweets anything that he thinks, and like that, this wording's really weird, and like that's not what he should be using it for, end quote, the 34-year-old merchant offered during a podcast appearance in June 2019. Justice Merchant, 61, on Tuesday imposed a limited gag order on Trump, prohibiting him from publicly bashing witnesses such as his fixer-turned-enemy, Michael Cohen, as well as prosecutors, court staff, and jurists. Trump, 77, will still be allowed to rip Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, an elected Democrat whose office is prosecuting the case, per the ruling. It also does not bar comments about Merchant or his family. Trump took aim Tuesday on his Truth Social platform, writing, Judge Merchant, a very distinguished looking man, is nevertheless a true and certified Trump hater who suffers from a very serious case of Trump derangement syndrome. In other words, he hates me. Donald Trump's not one to mix words, right? His daughter is a senior executive at super liberal Democratic firm that works for Adam Shifty Schiff, the Democrat National Committee, Senate Majority PAC, and even crooked Joe Biden, added Trump, who also referenced an image of himself behind bars that was posted to the daughter's one-time personal X account. A spokesperson for the New York State's court system claimed Merchant deleted the account, which was once linked to Authentic about a year ago, and that she no longer controls it. Quote, maybe the judge is such a hater because his daughter makes money by working to get Trump. And when he rules against me over and over again, he is making her company and her richer and richer, end quote, Trump wrote. Justice Merchant, who donated $15 to former Vice President Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, has supported other Democratic causes, did not return messages. Messages left with his daughter and her firm were also not returned. On the evening of March 28th, 2024, in response to President Trump's public comments, senior D.C. U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton appeared on The Source, a CNN television program hosted by Caitlin Collins. The appearance lasted nearly 10 minutes, and Judge Walton commented extensively. Collins posted the full interview on her X, formerly Twitter account, which has received over 1.8 million views since Thursday. That's a lot, right? We saw this a minute ago. Senior Judge Reggie Walton, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law and we believe in the rule of law. And the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm. Where does he get this, folks? That he must just pull this out of his backside. Donald Trump didn't say nothing about, what does he say here? Threat of potential physical harm. It's like they hear what they want to hear, or they're just flat liars. Probably both. Canon 3A6 indicates, Rule 3A6, in other words, indicates, quote, a judge should not make public comment on the merits of a matter pending or impending in any court. Pending or impending means it's before the court or it's about to come to the court. As discussed below, Judge Walton's interview violated this canon, which will taint President Trump's jury pools in 4 criminal cases. The interview began with Collins asking Judge Walton about President Trump's comments. Well, it's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they are directed at one's family. Judge Walton responded, what? Where did he get that, folks? Come on. Judge Walton accused President Trump of having threatened Justice Merchant and his family. There is no plausible alternative interpretation for Collins. Had read President Trump's social media post prior to her questions to Judge Walton about it. Any threat to the judge is a grave matter, and the perpetrator of such a threat should face serious consequences. A reasonable person cannot read President Trump's post and draw the conclusion that he made any such threat. President Trump articulated the reason why he believes he will not receive a fair trial before Judge Merchant. President Trump, for example, did not dox the home address of the judge or his adult daughter, nor did President Trump encourage illegal protests outside their homes. Perfect, right? Amen on that. Judge Walton continued, quote, the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm, end quote. Judge Walton then detailed threats against his daughter, as well as violence against 2 other judges. Number 1, Judge Joan Lowcroft of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, and number 2, Judge Esther Salas of the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey. Tragically, disgruntled litigants came to the judges' homes and murdered and wounded members of the judges' families. In those cases, there is no evidence that the murders that the murderers did so based on criticism of the judges by others who were exercising their First Amendment rights. Instead, like the assassination attempt against Justice Kavanaugh and his family, the issue was doxing, basically disclosing addresses publicly. All right, moving on. Judge Walton then had a discussion with Collins regarding the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. Hundreds of cases arising from this incident are pending in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Judge Walton's court. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit and the Supreme Court of the United States. President Trump is facing charges in one of these cases in the district court, and the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral arguments on the matter on April 25th. And we're going to be all over that, by the way, on the 25th. No doubt about that. That's going to be an important case, and I think it's going to be a great case, but we will see. After which the proceedings will return to the district court. Collins referenced Judge Walton's comments at sentencing January 6th defendants. Judge Walton characterized President Trump as a charlatan. After a jury verdict, Judge Walton declined to say whether he still harbors those beliefs. His statement after the jury verdict, while in our view inappropriate, is not the basis for our concern, but it was reasonably foreseeable that Judge Walton's extrajudicial CNN television appearance would lead to discussion of his in-court statements. Isn't this just completely unbelievable? CNN is a worldwide network. It's obvious prospective jurors in New York, Atlanta, Florida, and the District of Columbia criminal cases against President Trump watched Judge Walton's unprecedented and highly inappropriate CNN interview. These prospective jurors learned by virtue of Judge Walton's appearance that a sitting D.C. federal judge had characterized the former president so negatively. Amen. That's exactly right. The interview concluded with Collins asking Judge Walton why he had decided to comment publicly in response to President Trump's social media post. The judge responded, "I am concerned because, like I said, we have had judges who lost their lives or family members who have lost their lives as a result of individuals who have been litigants in their courtroom. And I think it's important in order to preserve the rule of law, and the rule of law can only be maintained if we have an independent judicial officers who are able to do their job and ensure that the laws are in fact enforced and that the laws are applied equally to everybody in our courthouse. I think it's important that the judges, as we speak and say things in reference to things that conceivably are going to impact on the process, because if we don't have a viable court system that's able to function effectively, then we have tyranny. And I don't think that would be good for the future of our country and the future of our democracy and our country. I mean, he's basically saying this was all Donald Trump's fault. If Donald Trump continues to do, I mean, he didn't do nothing. All right, Judge Walton's hyperbole is staggering. A criminal defendant expressed the view that he would not get a fair trial because of the business activities of the presiding judge's adult daughter, who is a Democratic political consultant. Whether one agrees with this view, one cannot construe it as a threat or a suggestion that anyone else threatens or perpetrates violence against the judge or his family. Again, President Trump never doxed the home addresses of Judge Merchant or his adult daughter. The statement is not a threat to the independent judiciary, nor to democracy more broadly. Judge Walton had no basis to comment on a defendant's assertion of a violation of a constitutional right to be a fair trial in a pending criminal case. I mean, it sounds reasonable to me. A criminal defendant has a First Amendment right to criticize the criminal proceedings against him. Earlier in the interview, Judge Walton asserted that people who have influence should exercise caution about their comments because whether intended, those comments could lead to violence or other threats. I mean, it's just really staggering that he even, I mean, when I read it in black and white, it just shocks me that much further. It is truly dangerous to all American civil liberties to label as a threat a criminal defendant raising potential bias by the judge presiding over his criminal case. Judge Walton did not go on CNN to condemn President Biden after the Biden White House press secretary and Biden Justice Department encouraged illegal intimidation campaigns outside the homes of conservative Supreme Court justices and their family following doxing. That's an excellent point, right? While the Dobbs case was pending, they claimed these illegal home protests were protected by the First Amendment when they clearly violated 18 U.S.C. 1507. The Biden White House and the Justice Department maintained their position of encouraging dangerous illegal home protests. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, that happens all the time. If it is the Democrats doing it, it's okay. If it's a Republican or a conservative person, it's an absolute outrage. And he mentions that here, an attempted assassination against Justice Kavanaugh and his wife, Ashley, and their 2 teenage daughters. Why did Judge Walton feel compelled to speak out against President Trump and not President Biden? Why don't Judge Walton go on CNN after the deaths against Judge Aileen Cannon, the death threats against Judge Cannon? Does Judge Walton have a political bias? This is why federal judges are better served when they do not take off their judicial robes and climb into the political arena. Absolutely correct. Canon 3A6. Commentary states, if a public comment involves a case from the judge's own court, the judge should not take particular care, or the judge should take particular care so that the comment does not disintegrate public confidence in the judiciary's integrity and impartiality, which would violate Canon 2A. It is much worse when a different judge, especially a sitting federal judge, thinks it's his job to moonlight as a CNN commentator on a pending criminal matter at another judge's court. Judge Walton's CNN interview clearly damaged the public's confidence in the judiciary's impartiality. Indeed, the media reports of the interview covered it as Judge Walton attacking President Trump. That's exactly what they said. For example, The Hill, a large publication in Washington, D.C., ran this presidential headline: Federal judge blasts Trump's attacks on judges, warns against tyranny. These are the top 6 results of a Google news search by the undersigned by typing in Reggie Walton. Yeah, that's the reason they put that in there on the Google search. Federal judge warns Trump's attacks and warns of Trump's attacks and extraordinary rebuke. Yeah, that's a good thing to add that in there. That's really, really good evidence right there. All right, the undersigned served as the chief counsel for nominations in the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary. I mean, folks, it is just ridiculous. Criticism comes with the territory, and the same principle applies to judges. Federal judges are given lifetime tenure and pay protection precisely to insulate them from criticism. In other words, they should be shutting up. We are seeing a dangerous pattern in which D.C. federal judges like Beryl Howell and now Reggie Walton have convinced themselves that they have a duty unbound by the judicial canons to make extrajudicial pronouncement about President Trump. Amen. But this is so much bigger than President Trump or even one presidential election. These judges are setting a very dangerous precedent, which can get deployed, which don't get tongue-tied here, it's a long diagram, which can get deployed against less wealthy and powerful defendants. The D.C. federal judges must get their house in order, otherwise Congress should do it for them. Amen. And it's signed by Mike Davis, founder of Article 3 Project. That was a very long but a good document. I enjoyed reading that, to be honest with you. That is exactly true, and it's outrageous, the judge's behavior. Absolutely outrageous. All right, let me see what else we got here. Anybody got some we got a few comments here, questions. Yeah, they keep going after President Trump. That is the truth. They keep going after Trump. Yeah, Trump gets more popular. I hope that continues on the thing. They may throw you out of live chat. Yeah, they probably would. Yeah. All right, Matt Smith, we should probably mail a thank you letter to Biden administration. Yeah, there's no doubt that if you remember in the polling, when all these cases started hitting, Trump's popularity went straight up. I think that's absolutely the case. Trump is awesome. I am definitely glad. All right, folks, I think we've reached where we need to be in this. Appreciate you joining me today. It's always my pleasure to chat with you. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, like, share, comment, all the good stuff. Friends, I appreciate each and every one of you, especially you regulars joining me. Definitely humbling. Always say, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.